Hello and welcome everyone to our 11th episode of our Partnership Ecosystems Improvement Series. Today we will dive into partner enablement. We will present how the success of your partners with your solution relies heavily on the level of support and enablement you provide to them, and discuss why effective channel partner enablement goes beyond traditional training programs. Our discussion today will focus on a more holistic approach that includes strategic alignment, comprehensive training, robust resources, and ongoing support. I hope this discussion will provide you with the insights you need to start building that relationship. So with us today, we have Gil Esposito, who has worked in the channel partnerships and alliances for over 2 decades, has worked with distributors, vendors, partners, and brings that 360-degree view to the conversation on partner ecosystems. We also have Carlo Breda. Carlo has spent nearly 3 decades in the channel, is passionate about partnerships, how companies can optimize the power of their partner ecosystems. And I am Aaron Solomon. I've worked to manage channel sales and marketing programs for a variety of vendors and helped several build their channels from ground up. So we are here, episode 11, partner enablement. So Gil, is enablement just a fancy word it's the buzzword for training right now? But there's so much more that goes into it. So let's get started.
Well, thank you, Aaron. And hello again for those of you that come back. And welcome to the webinar series for the new ones. It's a big buzzword, just like the one we covered last time, onboarding. Those are words that are not clearly well defined in the sense of what does it mean exactly, what fits into it, and all that. So enablement is the same thing, and I wanted to add that we've decided to split this portion into two segments. The first one we'll cover today, and I'll go into the plan. The second one will be around another aspect of enablement that is complementary to what we'll talk today, and usually comes after what we're going to be talking today, and which will involve how do you beyond make your the sellers at your partner and the pre-sales and the marketing teams and so on and so forth, how to make them capable of eloquently discuss your solutions in front of prospects and customers, and present you well so that they maximize their chances of landing deals with you and for you. Emphasis on with you. I'll come back to that. After that, how do you further incent them? So we'll talk about incentives and motivation in the next session, right? We have a lot to discuss about this as well. So enablement is should just be what it says, right? It's like you enable your partners to be able to promote your solution. That's it. What in the mind of most people that means is training. And then we can discuss at length how those trainings are traditionally delivered and what works, what doesn't work. We'll cover some of that today, and we're always available to have further discussion with any of you. If you have any issue with this, you can reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to have discussion with you and maybe more. But training is not a one-time thing, and usually the way it's delivered, training is a one-time thing. And that's it. It's an ongoing program. If you want to do it right, that covers a lot more than just the technical aspect of your product, what it does, and so on and so forth. So we've decided to define some kind of an approach, a plan, which will result in an asset, in a document that we'll make available for free for every single one of you. And we encourage you to go to our website and download those assets. We've had a few. We just finished the one about onboarding. It is already available in parts of our website, and you can go and get it for free, and somebody will upload the link to get there. The approach we have, and before that, I want to scroll back a minute and say, the thing about having your partners, and especially the sales team and the pre-sales team, being very eloquent and very confident that they can pitch your solution is this one. If they are not confident that they can properly pitch your solution, they can look or seem or present a firm that seems very educated in front of their prospects and even more importantly in front of their customers, the result is always the same. They're just not going to talk about it. That's it. They're partners. They have a line card with a ton of thing on them. When they're in front of their prospect and customers, they're not going to talk about the thing that will make them look like they're just full of wind and can talk properly about something, because that would usually result in making their prospect and customer think they're, flaky or full of it or whatever. But they will lose confidence, they will lose trust if they do that, so therefore they pass. So it's a step that is critical and really important, that you make sure that your partners, and again especially pre-sales and salespeople, are very well educated in your solution and can pitch it properly. So that being said, I mentioned we've designed a structure. It's composed of 4 steps. We try to be as short as possible each and every time, and those 4 steps are going to be, the first one is going to be the planning. So your enablement strategy, what it is that you're trying to achieve, and so on and so forth, and how you're going to measure your performance in that area, and we'll dive a little bit more into this. Then we're going to talk again. We talked about this a lot last time. The content and resources you need to have at the ready for your partner to be enabled, right? We'll dive a little deeper then. That's step number 3 into training and education. And then we'll talk about what's missing the most, which is the collaborative aspect and the communication that goes around all that, right? Because again, as I said, one observation through years or decades of doing this is that most of the time, the training delivered by vendors or one-time thing, and that's it, done. And unless you launch a new product, then you may have other trainings associated to a new product, but it shouldn't stop there. It should be a lot more than that. So anything to add, Carlo or Aaron, on this before I dive into exactly
No, I love it. You laid out the foundation beautifully. Let's dig in.
it's approved by the dog as well, so this is great. Why a strategy again, right? So, or if you don't want to call it strategy, why a phase where you need to plan? Well, just like any other thing that you're going to be doing, it's better to do it with a plan. So know what you're going to be doing, define your expectation, your objectives, all those type of things, and what KPIs you're going to put in place to make sure that everything that you're trying to achieve is going to be functioning, right? So let's talk about a few KPIs that are important here. You're going to have your leading and your lagging KPIs as always, right? So you want to have some resources usage. You're going to have things available on your PRM or on your website, on our share folder, whatever the mean you use to share the resources with your partners. Of course, if it's just something that you send them through emails or you invite them to a Google Drive or something like this, you're not going to be able to measure much. But usually from a PRM standpoint or a content management system standpoint, you're going to be able to see, the clicks on your document, the downloads, and those type of thing. And those are interesting indicator to see who's engaged, who's not, and react according to this, right? The learning KPIs that you may have. So those are based on training and courses, and it's going to be on completion. It's going to be on the number of active versus the number of potential learners that you have in a given company, the certification, the scoring, all that kind of stuff, right? And then you have all your lagging stuff, which is going to be the engagement and performance KPIs that you may have in place, which you're going to be using for many, many other things. Such as, how many marketing campaigns they're going to launch, how many opportunity registrations you get, the conversion rates, the revenue generated, all that type of thing. But you want to have this in place within your enablement, tied to your enablement strategy. So you're going to be able to measure whether or not there are things you need to do in your training programs, in your enablement strategy, um, to improve it, or things that are working very well that you want to repeat, and so on and so forth. So that's the baseline. And of course, when you do that, it's also going to help you because you're going to define again your expectations and objective, a number of things that you need to get at the ready to have at the ready before you start engaging with your partners. So these are going to be what is going to be the content, the training content. What are going to be the delivery vehicles? Are you going to do this through webinars? Are you going to do this through scheduled sessions with in-person, virtual in-person trainer every month? Are you going to be, are you going to be delivering self-paced videos and so on and so forth, right? The frequency of those things, what type of content you're going to be associating to each training so that at the end you have those live behinds that people can review and so on and so forth, right? Out of those initiatives, you're going to also be, trying to put in place a partner feedback process. It's important for every training or every course or anything that you're going to be delivering to your partner, that you have the ability to have their feedback so that they can tell you whether it's great or whether it's not great at all, and how you're going to be tweaking it. What are you going to be doing, right? And there's one thing that people forget that I always say, put this in your enablement strategy, is find a methodology, a way, a process, whatever you want to call it, to identify new reps, new pre-sales reps, and so on and so forth coming into the company, right? Usually you deliver your training. If you're lucky, you have the entire sales team in a room for the sales training, the entire pre-sales team in a room for, the technical trainings and this type of thing. And then, as I said, for a lot of companies, it stops here. That's it. We've done the enablement for this company. We've done the training. Now they're off to the fields and going to hunt for you. However, just like your company, these people hire and fire and lay off and get new people coming in all the time. How do you identify those people, right? And what methods you're going to have in place to deal with your counterpart at this company, so you're always notified when somebody else is going to join, so you can grab them as early as possible and provide them with what it is that you're going to do to enable them to sell, right? So it's an important thing. It's very easy to forget, but think about this, right? Anything to add, Carlo, on this, or?
Again, no, I think you're hitting all the salient points. I think just to chime in, channel enablement really is about making sure the partners are going to be really, really successful and enthusiastic, ideally from the get-go. So in my book, I think it's important also to kind of lay an expectation as to what the timeline is, because it's not something that happens overnight. As you quite rightly say, it's not a question of training them once. It's not even a question of training them several times. It's about that enablement through engagement is really the strategy to success. In my book, and this is something that we've done at Gorilla for decades. For me, I think one of the important things that I wanted to highlight out of what you're saying is how important is the orchestration of engaging the partner at the sales level, at the technical level, and at the marketing level. These are three different enablement processes that need to be done pretty much concurrently and over a period of pretty much, it's forever, but the key time is about a year. One could say, well, it's a 9-month process. I mean, in many cases, in B2B complex sales, it's kind of a 9-month process. Ultimately, the philosophy is that of teach a man how to fish, right? So, I'm not going to go too much into the details, but that's kind of what I'm thinking and just what I wanted to emphasize.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
So if you guys remember the closing of the onboarding session that we had last time, so our webinar number 10, we talked about that a little bit, right? We talked about the next steps after the onboarding, and one of them was the welcome letter or the welcome email or the welcome webinar or whatever it is that you want to put in place, right? And the things Carlo just talked about, the scheduling of what comes next is part of that, right? You want to make sure that there's some kind of a dashboard in place that you maintain and that you share with your main point of contact. If it's a vendor manager at the partner, or if it's a salesperson or a sales manager, something like this, right? And in this, you're going to list the things that are coming up, and of course, out of those things, training is going to be a big chunk of it, right? And after that, how you're going to structure the training, and this is something, when you're a large company, you're going to have your format for things, and you're going to say, if you're technical, you have to attend those classes, you have to do X, Y, and Z, and if you're sales, you have to do that. And if you're marketing, there's a track for you, and so on and so forth, depending on the richness of your education system, right? Or your university, as some companies call their training programs. But that's something you do during the onboarding, right? You make everybody aware they're going to have to do it. One note of caution here: it's really hard to be able to gather all the sales rep at the same time and have them in like a room or on a webinar and that kind of stuff. It's going to be extremely difficult. First of all, because they're sales rep. Second of all, because they carry a number of lines and they have their sales schedules and all that kind of stuff and all that. So I strongly encourage, and not only for the sales reps, for the pre-sales people as well, although very often they're going to be under the same management in smaller companies. So you need to have the buy-in of the sales manager or the VP of sales or the CRO, whatever you want to call this person, and to make sure that they help you get all these people in the room when you have the main training or the first training delivered and all that. If your delivery mechanism is a webinar or in person or that type of stuff. A note about in-person deliveries: they're the best. They're great because you can, you have the people right there in front of you. You can take them to the bar or to a restaurant or do whatever events you have planned for them after. It's nothing beats that to that point, but it's costly, especially if they're not like 5 miles away from you. So for the nearby one, you may want to do that. For the one that are the most important to you, if you can already assess this, you can do that. But think of all the other way of delivering as well. And regardless of the internal support at your partner, you're going to have to put all the people in the room. You're always going to miss on some people and all that. So I just talked about in the strategy, think about all your delivery mechanism, all the vehicles you're going to be using to deliver your training. It's better to have multiple ones, right? In person when you can, live webinars when you can, because you can at least interact and answer questions and this type of thing. But think also of things like video on demands and those type of things, right? Because some people are not going to be able to be there at the time you have something scheduled. And video on demand are great because people can come back if they forget. So if your product is not going to sell 3 times a day, and it's only going to sell like once a month or once a quarter or something like this, people are going to tend to forget at the beginning, some of the things that are probably important for them to conduct a sales cycle that is efficient and successful. So they would want to come back to those materials and be able to look at them when they have the time, right? So think about all these things, but we'll cover that, right? Step number two in what? So we covered step number one: plan, right? Know what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and how to measure it, and have a feedback mechanism for it, right? That's the baseline. Step number two: content and resources. I am not going to expand on this because, again, we provided a very exhaustive list of things you need to have at the ready in terms of battle cards, product sheets, data sheets, all that stuff, use cases, case studies, all those type of things, right? And we provided that list in the asset that is now available for you guys, but with comments, right? We lead you to be able to organize this into what should be the most important to what should be the least important, because there's about 20 to 30 assets that we listed, and a lot of small companies, startups, scale-ups, and all that are not going to have the marketing team to be able to produce all this before you start recruiting your partners and all that. So we've made it in a way that should be able to help you define what's the most important, and then next, and that's an ongoing process, right? As you go in time, you will be able to deck your CMS, your content management system, or your PRM, or your shared drive, or whatever, with more information, and that's important to do. But again, when you have an asset library like a PRM or a CMS, it's great because, and most PRMs include a CMS, albeit fairly light, but it will give you the ability to measure how many times this document was viewed, downloaded, and so on and so forth, and that ties directly into engagement. So you may want to think about this at some point. Anything about the content library or the content you need to have in place, Aaron or Carlo, to complement this?
No, not so much. There was just something I just wanted to add. I know we moved on in time, but to the training component, I just wanted to mention that what really works well, we have seen with a number of clients, is micro training. I just wanted to mention that so that people will think about it, because especially, well, for two reasons. One, it's delivered frequently and in microparticles, if you like, right? So and it's quite helpful for the commercial side, for the salespeople. The salespeople will struggle to sit down and actually do a course. The academy is essential. Every dollar you spend on training is absolutely fundamental, and it's never a bad expenditure, right? But micro training, I think, has worked extremely well, and just in addition to that, the in-person training is again paramount in terms of doing that, the teach man how to fish. So don't rely just on online systems. Don't rely just on having the partners go to the portal. There
If you
has to be
can,
human engagement. Yeah.
if you can, and if you have the budget, right? Carl, I'm going to stop you here. Save that for the next entry, because right now we're
Yeah.
on content, and you're
Yeah. Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about, which is the next one, but that's okay. We'll do that.
That's fine.
Couple things about that I wanted to add about your content and the management of your content, right? Make sure that whatever system you have, if you have a PRM or a CMS, make sure every member at the partner of a community, so a technical person, a salesperson, or whatever, have the ability to quickly identify that this is a sales document or this is a technical document, and through either bookmarks or preferences or whatever, are capable of creating their own library, which would be associated to their login and password and those type of things. So it's normally it exists in every single one of them, so that they're not completely drowned into every time they want something, they have to go in a folder where there's 200 documents and they have to find the one that is relevant to them. That's not good, especially for salespeople. They're not going to spend the time doing this, right? So that's the well organized aspect of managing a content library. The other aspect that has to be engaging, right? Make sure your documents are sexy and people want to read them, right? Otherwise, if it's ugly, if it's super loaded PowerPoint presentation, like it's in it, the size of the character is 8, and nobody's going to go through that, right? It's annoying. So make sure it's engaging, make sure it's well organized. Make sure you have a naming convention that is logical, enables the people to identify what the document is about, and they can download it, they can do all the kind of thing, but they know which one is which very easily. And make sure the naming convention is the same for everything, so there's a logic into it, right? It's better to do that, and it's much easier to do that from the get-go when you're just starting to develop a content library, wherever it resides, than when you're already an established company. So if we have people from AWS with us and all that, we're not going to tell them, hey, you got to rename your 8 million documents, right? No, they're not going to do that, right? So, but if you have the chance to be at the beginning, at the onset of or deploying your channel strategy and everything that goes around it, including the documents, do it from the get-go. Simple, efficient, and with the ability for people to identify clearly what it is, right? Um, what else to say about this? Yes. Anything that's going to be, even if you have proofreaders or whatever, you're going to have errors. You're going to have things that are going to change, updates, and you're going to have new versions of your document, right? Make sure these are immediately uploaded or immediately transmitted or distributed, regardless of the way you're passing on your information and your assets. Make sure this is done as early as possible, and make sure you have a process to communicate this to your partner community. I would advise, of course, to involve your vendor manager or your main point of contact and have them do that. But it's also a good opportunity for you or for your salespeople as a vendor to reach out to their counterparts at your partner and say, hey, you remember that thing you downloaded, blah, 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 or that I passed on? Well, that's an old one. Here's the new version. Get rid of the old one. This is much better. We revamped this case study. We revamped this, battle card, and you'll see there's a lot of improvement, blah, blah. Not only they're happy because you do that very proactively with them rather than just sending an email or a message on a banner on a PRM, although this is good too. And it's not one or the other. All of the above is good. But that gives you every time you're going to do something like this, you have an opportunity to engage with your partner. And whether it's a 5-minute discussion or a 50-minute discussion, doesn't matter. You have the opportunity to engage more. Every time you do that, it's kind of a refresher on their, mindshare priority. You get further up when you do this. And every time you do this, it's time they spend with you versus time they're going to spend with another vendor. And by the way, I'm going to repeat this one. You guys have heard me say it a million times. Your competitors at your partners is every other vendor, not just the one that do the same thing you do. Every single one of them is a competitor because you all compete for mindshare. So when you have an opportunity to reach out to anybody at your partner, do it. This is a good way to do that. So that's pretty much it with content. Again, I refer you to the document we just published. You will have a very exhaustive list of all the things to think about. Aaron, anything else? Carlo?
No, I'm glad you mentioned removing old files and outdated versions of some documents. I've seen that create some chaos in the past. And the only other thing I would add is, depending on the capabilities in your CMS, if you have the ability to make some of them co-brandable for the partners, obviously you want to make sure that those are easily found by the partners and that they have the opportunity to co-brand some of the assets. So as they're marketing for you, that they can add their value prop and their logo and leverage the credibility of the vendor's logo as they're marketing. Yeah. So
that is absolutely critical to have an area of your CMS or in your PRM, content library or whatever system you're using, even if it's just a share folder on Google, to have a folder that is going to be, co-brandable assets, right? Or co-marketing assets. And to have a special edition of those assets so that you have the reserve for the logo and for the blurb that each and every one of your partners is going to want to add to your document, so they can do that. You may also want to have some documents that are editable, so people can slightly tweak things and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. They want to have a process of verification as to what they do and all that. But if you only give them PDFs that they can do anything and they absolutely need to add something and all that, you're going to create, delays for launching campaigns and all that kind of stuff. But they will usually come back to you. But if you have this at the ready, you're going to be able to scale more. So,
yep.
Carlo?
Yeah, I just want to say they're supporting what Aaron just said, really, is the fact that it's a mindset thing that sometimes we miss out in the vendor community, is the fact that the reseller isn't just reselling your product, and they're not even reselling just all the other products per se, right? It's not like you see the difference. It's not like going to Walmart. It's more like going to a restaurant, right? And so the reseller is kind of the chef, right? The restaurant manager and the chef all rolled into one, and they will take whatever components, whatever platforms and technologies, and create usually a solution that is their own recipe, right? And so therefore, when it comes to the content, that's why you want the content to be very customizable. In fact, you want it to be partner led. Because don't forget, there's another thing that you need to remember is the fact that the whole install base and the customers of the partner are their customers. They're not your customers, right? They're not the vendor's customers generally. They are the customers of the partner. And so therefore, the ability to make it easy for the partner to create and to launch in the PRM partner-led value propositions is absolutely instrumental. And whilst we're talking about portals, I'll say one more thing. Most portals nowadays give you the opportunity to create playbooks. And I would encourage everybody here that is investing or has invested in a PRM to fully exploit that capability, because a playbook will just make life so much easier for your partner account managers in particular, but also to an extent for your partner community. So with the playbooks, you can see the playbooks. If you organize a playbook in a passive format, chances are that people won't engage it. They won't go there and follow the rules. But with playbooks, you can also make them actually very proactive, so that the platform sends out reminders to fulfill the next step of that playbook. So that's a very powerful functionality that goes hand in hand with having a digital asset management repository, and with all the other benefits that a PRM platform provides. So I just wanted to say that whilst we're talking about content. Back over to you, Gilles.
All right. So we covered your planning, we covered the content that you need to have at the ready before you start doing your trainings and all that kind of stuff, right? Now we're going to talk about training and education. So what would an ideal training and education program looks like? Well, it would be customized for everybody, and it would be delivered in person for everybody. And you would have absolutely everybody from the partner, depending on their different roles, right, in attendance every time you do this. Reality of this being what you're going to be doing is slim to none, and for various reasons, right? So let's talk about the customization first of all. And it's nice to be able to have trainings and classes and courses that is adapted to all the potential scenarios you're going to have in front of you. That takes a lot of resource to do, and it's very costly, and it prevents most companies, most smaller companies, from scalability. Even large ones have these issues. So the way a large one remedy to it is something you can adapt, right? Usually they create path, and there's different tiers in a specific area, which combine, for example, sales acumen with a specific product or a specific solution, right? And you're going to do 101 before do 201, before do 301, before do 401, and so on and so forth, right? So you're going to have, at the end of the day, a succession of modules that people are going to be able to take and to study. And whether or not you have test or a certification process around it, that's a different thing. But ideally, so my point here is to say, have something, even if it's not covering all the scenarios, try to start building your content in a modular way from the get-go. So this is alluding a little bit to what Carlo was saying in the micro trainings. You don't have to feed them absolutely everything that is needed to know from the get-go about everything, covering the bases, because you don't know whether or not they're newbies in this area or absolute experts, right? Whether it's the product itself or the area that it serves or their sales capability or pre-sales capability and all that. One way that we described last month when talking about the onboarding, I don't know if you guys remember, but we talked about the intake form. The intake form is the beginning of you developing a very good knowledge of the partner, right? From the company itself, where it's going, so mission, vision, all that type of thing, where they like to play, their verticals, their geos, all this type of thing. And this is just a baseline. You're going to start learning more about this as you talk to different people at your partners, and you're going to enrich your knowledge of who are they, where they're going, what they want to do, and so on and so forth. But you got to do the same thing, and that's something we suggested to put in the intake form. You got to do something for the level of knowledge relative to your solutions. of each and every person you're going to target for your training and education. So the salespeople, the pre-sales, and potentially the marketing people as well. And it's going to be important for you to understand, because if you realize that this is a brand new team, you have like one rock star salesperson in there that has a lot of experience and a lot of success in the past, and then you have nine other that are like completely green, right? You're not going to shape your sales training the same way you're going to shape it if you have only rock stars or only very seasoned salespeople, right? Same with pre-sales, same with everything else. So it's important for you to gauge what is going to be the and it doesn't have to be 200 degrees of difference, right? It can be low, medium, high. It can be low, high. It can be those type of thing. But I've trainings that are, if not in the content, at least in the delivery method. So that's on the instructor, are going to be tailored to who it is that you're going to be talking to for the majority of the room or the majority of the webinar or whatever it is. And if you have, again, if you have modular things that people are going to take individually, like videos on demands and this type of thing, then it's much easier at this point. But you're also shooting the scalability of what you're doing a little bit, right? And it's hard to produce like multiple things. You're going to start small and you're going to act fast and you're going to grow. And ultimately, you will see some scenarios you need to address in terms of competency or capabilities or whatnot, where you are going to want to make sure that whatever it is that you're trying to transmit, to convey, to teach is going to be understood based on the knowledge of those people. So you have to assess at some point who you're talking to or who you're going to be training through the different mechanism and content you're going to put in place, right? That's something really, really important. Now, what's going to be in your training, of course, has to encompass a bunch of things, right? Your product knowledge, but it may also encompass your business development and sales techniques, especially if you're dealing with newer reps, right? It's always really, really appreciated. Something I used to do in the past. And I've done it at very large company like Hitachi, for example, where in the sales training where we presented the solutions we wanted the new partners and the existing partners to go and promote, we would also offer a sales training, right? So it wasn't like a 6-week sales training with 200 binders and it was something very simple, very, very well designed, based on different methodology like spin and PSS and all these guys. But down to the nutshell, and very well done, very participative, very engaging for the people that were new in sales or not very experienced in sales. And we incorporated that in the training. And 3 years later, I had trained 1,600 salespeople, 1,600, right? So you can gauge the type of mind share you have from the sales management team and all that when you do those kind of things. That's something they don't have to think about, something they don't have to go and buy, and so on and so forth. It was embedded in our training, right? So you may want to encompass this as well. And of course, you may want to have trainings on industry insights, on your marketing best practices with the marketing team, and say, hey, we've noticed that by doing X, Y, and Z, we have a return rate that is much higher, which leads into a conversion rate that is much higher. It's going to make you look good. Listen to my story, right? And then you can share with them, and they can do the same thing in return. Share with you things that they've been doing that are working very well, or best practices they've had from other vendors that they want to impart you with, so that because they're best practices, they think that if you apply this to your solutions and your training as well, it's going to increase the conversion rate of everything they're going to be doing. So, and I'll go to that, the collaboration part, which is the next one, right? But prioritize sales and pre-sales if you don't have the bandwidth to do all the things that would make it an absolutely stellar thing, right? But try to make it modular so that, and the PowerPoint, it's kind of easy when you leverage PowerPoint to do a training during a webinar or something. You can have a ton of slides that you're not showing that you're going to pull as it's needed based on your knowledge of the environment you have in the class. Even during the class, if you didn't know who was going to come and you realize that some people need reinforcement with slide number 72 and 73, then you can go to that if you know what it is and all that, right? What's also important You've already defined clearly what your specific learning objectives are, and so on and so forth. Um, at some point, as Carlo was saying, you need to do micro trainings and this type of thing. Micro trainings are also very good for when you have specific, if you have a line card of multiple things you want to sell, but you, for whatever reason, you need to promote this more than that, right? You can offer this training in time and say, hey, we're going to have like a 30-minute refresher on X, Y, and Z, or on this because there's a spiff associated to it. And we want you guys to make sure you maximize your gains and your ability to earn what results from that spiff as much as possible, right? So you also use my point here is to say you're also going to use your trainings to influence behavior in the case of geos you want to target, verticals you want to target, or products you want to promote, or services you want to promote more than others at any given time. And remember, every time you reach to your partner, and you get a hold of them, it's an opportunity for you to discuss other things as well, and so on and so forth, right? So anything to add to this before I go a little deeper into the different types of training?
Not necessarily to add. We do have a question from Chris: is what additional channel training technology should be included to manage partner participation?
What additional channel training technology?
Yeah, I think where he's heading is kind of where I'm going as well, which is what you mentioned at the very tail end. I just wanted to make a greater meal out of it, which is the whole idea of incentives. I think that incentives and training need to be strategized together and interwoven together as you roll it out. I've seen incentives work really, really well at getting that engagement with the partner community, especially in the long run, right? To keep them interested. Yeah, I guess that's perhaps where Chris was heading. Certainly, it's a point I wanted to make.
So I agree and I disagree with that statement, right? I agree in the sense that when you can couple a specific training with an incentive, it's great, right? Especially for salespeople or pre-sales people. It's they're used to that. They react to that. Usually, depending on the quality of your incentive and the feasibility of achieving the goals of your incentives. So it's great when you can do it. However, incentives are you're not going to always couple your incentives with trainings or things like this, right? You're not going to do that. It's you can define, if you want, a strategy by which every time you have an incentive, you also have a refresher on the nature of the incentives, right? If it's product specific or that kind of thing. But if it's not, if it's something that has nothing to do with a specific product or whatever, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to justify, getting. But you can also have, all the incentives I had, I used to when I was working for vendors, I used to present them to my top partners by scheduling a call with their sales manager. And the first call with the sales manager was, of course, to get, and we'll talk about that next month, to get approval for the incentives, because a lot of companies, a lot of partners do not approve of a lot of incentives, and I'll explain why later. But first you get that, and then again, you're going to want to have all the people in the room and say, hey, Bob, you're the VP of sales and all that. Can we schedule something with your team, maybe at the tail of your sales meeting next Monday? And I'll take 20 minutes to present, 15, 20 minutes to present that new incentives we have in place, right?
And closely coupled to what you're saying, there's also the topic of accreditation and certification,
So
which
that
is, in a
that
sense,
that
is an incentive
yeah.
too, right? Especially for the technical people.
So that's something that, you're going to have people that are methodical and thorough and this and that. And then if they see, 5 paths of things that concern them in a training or in an education portfolio that you may have, they're going to want to check everything, right? You can associate incentives to this. Absolutely. Right. And you can associate incentives at the individual level, or you can associate incentive at the tier level of your partner program, right? You can say, for example, I need for you to be platinum, you're going to need to have X people in technical certification that have reached that level, and X people in the sales certification that have reached that level, and so I've dealt with Amazon for years and years and years as a partner of theirs, and they have a lot of this in place, right? You can imagine Microsoft does the same thing, Google does the same thing. I don't know about Google, but all those large companies usually have like full-blown university systems with like pathing and all that. And every single tiering or every single category of their partner program, like for example at AWS, if you're in the ISV track, there's a number of things that you're going to need to have if you want to go higher in that track, right? And that makes sense because they don't want yahoos to go out there and start promoting stuff and make them look bad. But on top of that, yes, it is a very good incentive. So again, you can do that at the program level for the company, in which case you're going to have a lot of buy-in from the CEO of that company that, of course, wants to be on the higher tracks. So he's going to push everybody for doing it. So you're covered there. But you can also do it at the individual level, and you can have spiffs associated to education. You can do whatever you want, right? And it's good. It's all of this is good, right? You don't need to, but more is better usually. So it's great.
No, I agree.
So
As time is ticking, I'm going to let you move on to the collaboration section then.
no, I'm not done with training.
Okay.
So I'm going to say a few more things about training, right? So we understand like there's usually four categories. Well, usually you're going to have three categories that are covered in training. So you're going to have your product knowledge or a solution knowledge if it's services or anything else. You're going to have the sales expertise. You're going to have technical expertise, right? Those are the baseline three. I would advise that whoever delivers those things. So it's the delivery is so important, right? Because if you have the best expert in the world at your technology, and he or she is completely monotone and boring and that kind of stuff, your training is going to be a train wreck, right? It's not going to work. So you have, again, just same as the document we're talking about, you're going to want to have things that are engaging, right? And where people, and lights sometimes, right? With jokes and icebreakers and all these type of things. If you do a in-person training, in-person or virtually in-person training, so webinars and in a room, you want a good delivery. A good delivery is more important than what it is that you're going to be teaching them, because, and that's also one of my refrain thing that I say all the time, people will remember how you make them feel. They won't remember what you said, not a whole lot, but they will definitely remember how you made them feel. And if this is a positive feeling, you're good. If it's a negative feeling, you're not good. It's as simple as that. So make sure the delivery is important. And there is also an element of validation when your teacher or your presenter or whatever is from your team, right? So if you have somebody that obviously is not a salesperson and tries to deliver a sales training, this is not going to go well. These guys are going to sniff you a million miles away and see you've never been on the field or you're not very good on the field, right? Make sure you got a good engaging person there, but also a salesperson for sales training. Make sure you have a good technical person for technical training, right? This type of thing. Make sure you have somebody, if you do, so after these three, you have a couple others that needs to be delivered every now and then, right? The marketing one is important. Make sure you have somebody that understands the lingo of marketing and makes the difference between an SQL and an MQL and all this kind of thing, can talk the language with someone else. People will relate, and that's really important that they can relate, because if an expert of your team talks to you, you're going to be receiving this information more openly and you're going to accept it more easily than if it's somebody that obviously has nothing to do with the job you're doing every day. So that's important. So covered marketing, technical, sales, product knowledge, all that type of thing that can fit into any of these categories. There's one that usually is never forgotten by large company, but very often forgotten by small one: legal and compliance. right? Think of this, especially if you're in areas of technology with export laws and restrictions and those type of things, and or cybersecurity, which falls into this category anyway. Make sure you have a little something here, because they probably signed in the contract that they were going to respect your engagement from a legal and according to the laws of the United States or whatever country you're representing today. It's important to have a little something on this. It doesn't need to be 2-hour training, but it's important to have something in there. You can blend it in into other trainings if you want, that's fine, but make sure it's covered. So that's it on the training. We can move to the next one, but again, remember that it's not once you've done it, case closed and all that. It's an ongoing process. It's multiple touch point for you. It's because your product is not a recurring sale every week or every day, you're going to need to refresh their memory. You're going to have delta trainings. You're going to, based on improvement of your solutions and or evolution of the market, or both, right? You're going to have new hires in the company. You need to be able, again, find a methodology to capture, hey, do you have new sales guys? Hey, do you have new pre-sales guys? Hey, do you have new marketing people? Can I talk to them and schedule something one-on-one with them, or provide them with access to our video on demands or whatever it is, right? There's we're going to deliver you an asset was like about 30 bullet points of things to think of, best practices, getting feedback, all those type of things, right? It's important that you look at them, and maybe some of them will appeal to your curiosity and go like, oh yeah, I never thought about this, why not doing this? So this is us gathering information from between 2 and 3 decades of best practices in channels and in partnerships. So we're trying to put all of this into a small package and deliver it to you guys, right? And I'm not going to go through all of them, but have a look. It's good. Nothing else on training for me. We can move to collaboration and communication, but I think people got already the gist of this, because we've talked a lot about that. So we have 8 minutes left, right? So the concept of collaborating and communicating around your enablement program is the same as for any other aspect, any other portion of your program, right? If you want to work at peak efficiency, you're going to need to have collaboration, and you're going to need to have a lot of communication with your partners, right? Especially around your trainings and around your assets or your documents, if you prefer. So you can do that, which the message we're passing on to you today is like, do it, right? Again, it's not, it's done, move on to the next partner. No, it's never done. It's ongoing and ongoing and ongoing, right? Whatever format you're going to be using to do this, schedule calls, this and that, it's, try to do it with multiple people, because again, your vendor manager and your VP of sales and the sales rep and the pre-sales guy, they're not going to give you the same feedback, the same message about your stuff, right? And you want to make sure you incorporate the stuff. They're going to come back from the field using your training and say, your stuff doesn't work, right? I cannot fight this aspect of FUD. I find that every time I talk about that thing you told me to talk a lot about, I have a negative reaction from my prospects, my customers. So if you don't have this information, you're not going to be able to evolve your program, because you're going to be in the dark. You're not going to know what's happening. Well, you're going to have some information if you have a direct sales team that's probably going to tell you similar things. But it's good to have the feedback from the partner, or maybe they're going to tell you, you need to retweak this because in the healthcare industry, they don't want to hear about that. But in the finance industry, they do, right? And so on and so forth. So that's it. You need to talk to them often. You need to make sure they know as early as something is available to them and make them use it or consume it, right? And again, same thing. Every minute you're going to spend with these people is a minute they're not going to spend with your competition, which is, again, every single other vendor on their line card. And that's it for me. Are we doing on time?
We're doing very well.
Yeah.
So the advice I think, is really spot on. I think where you're going with this quite rightly, is you got to do enablement, you got to do it properly, and to do it properly, you have to engage with the right levels of management and the partner side, involve your stakeholders, time-consuming stuff. And you said it yourself. Can you advise the audience on how this ought to be resourced in terms of practically, how much can a partner account manager actually do? What should you expect from him or her? Is there a ratio that you would say that you would apply of number of partners that a partner manager can ought to deal with? I mean, how would
Oh
you
yeah.
offer practical advice along those lines?
There's a number in the industry, right, that has been floating around for years and years and years, and usually, so it depends on the volume of sales, of course, that you're going to get out of the partner, because a partner manager or a channel manager or partner account manager, or whatever you want to call them, right, depending on the company they're working for, may have more work to do for each partner or less work to do, but usually, so every time I had teams of channel managers, I try to never deck more than 15 to 20 partners per channel manager. And I'm talking about active partners here, right? So they may have a slew of other partners, and there's a strategy usually we put in place to move partner from inactive to active, and move them from active to rock stars and that kind of stuff. And usually at some point, unless there's a very strong level of emotional / relationship engagement between a channel manager and their partners, there's other mechanism to move like super rock stars into, there's also mechanism to manage the one that are not super engaged or very small producers, with companies like Gorilla, for example, right, where we have concierge, and we say, you know what, I have an ecosystem of 500 partners, I have 50 of them that are like absolutely stellar. We got that. I have 150 of them that we hope they're going to turn into the 50. We kind of have that, but we could need some help to reinvigorate their engagement level and that kind of stuff. And then we have 300 of them that are doing jack, but we don't want to scrap them because every now and then they bring a deal. What can a company like Gorilla do for us to energize this base, right? And that's something Gorilla does and other companies. But my channel managers usually, they're very, very engaged on 15 to 20 at the most, at the very most, right? But remember that all the things we covered today, the enablement and the thing we covered last month, the onboarding and all that kind of stuff, as a channel manager, you should be the coordinator of that. You're not going to be doing the delivery of all the trainings. You're not going to be writing all the contents. You're not going to be doing all that kind of thing. So as always in channels and partnerships, it takes the whole village to do something properly, right? So for me, it's important that whoever is at the helm of the channel organization is capable of making this message pass to other peers, the sales guys, the marketing, the CMO, the CRO, the VP of whatever product and engineering, and of course the CEO of the company, and make them understand that partnerships is always a whole village kind of thing, which is sad because when you look at partnership organization, they are so, still to this day, they are so siloed. They're so isolated within an organization, right? When they should be having fingers into every other department, every other thing, right? But yeah.
Agree. So there's one more thing that we'll save it for next time. Maybe it's the discussion of the role of funded heads and partner enablement. But we'll save that for next time. Yeah.
That's part of leveraging your MDF and all that, and your incentives. Yeah, I've had a lot of success with funded hits, so it's a good thing. It's costly, but it's a good thing. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Gilles. Really good session.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Gilles. Thank you, Carlo. And I'd like to thank everyone else for joining us today. Great discussion, really interesting topic, and to be continued next month as well. So this recording will be available on our website at gorillaict.com. Chris posted the link to our resources in the chat. So you can find this under our events tab, as well as our YouTube channel. So connect and follow us on LinkedIn. And then join us next month. We'll continue the discussion on partner enablement and looking at ways to keep your partners motivated through marketing support, program incentives, spiffs for both sales and marketing. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.